African American Life and History, which was founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. As you can see, he was a strong brother, all serious business, no fronting. Right? You can tell that this was a great black man who used information to inform his people and the world around him about the greatness of African culture. Here at the bottom, you see Dr. Carter G. Woodson at Morgan State University, where he graduated from, giving back to the community. We also have one of our esteemed faculty members who also graduated from Morgan State University and is carrying on the great works of Dr. Carter G. Woodson with informing us about African history. Dr. Woodson was born in 1875 and he passed away to ancestorhood in 1950. He was a historian and an educator. He wrote more than a dozen books. He founded the association in 1915, founded the Journal of Negro History in 1916, and the founder of Negro History Week in 1926. So Black History Month in 1926 started off as Black History Week, and Negro History Week. And do we know why it was started as Negro History Week? Yep. Why? Because they were celebrating two men at that time already, so they thought that they would use that momentum to capitalize on the two men with Abraham Lincoln and Okay. That brother is correct. I hope y'all heard that and wrote that down. But notice we have taken it further than Lincoln and Douglas. Right? He founded Negro History Bulletin in 1937, and this is the 97th annual celebration of African Heritage Month. We have been celebrating this month on this campus for over 20 years. Dr. Carter G. Woodson also was issued a stamp in memorial in 1984. So this shows the importance, and you see on the stamp it says Black Heritage, right? So there is a signal of that the vision that Dr. Carter G. Woodson had was going all the way back to heritage. It's not a month anymore. It was heritage, right? So our heritage is more than these 28 days. So the association also has a theme. Every year they have a theme. And the theme for this year is Black Resistance. So if you take a look in the library, we do have displays in the library that focus and talk about Black resistance. And if you look at our calendar of events, you will see that we will talk about Black resistance, right? Dr. Woodson contributed to our society. He put Black people in the center of our own experiences. He presented us as the subject of our own experiences rather than being the object of others' contempt from them. He presented us as the principal actors on the historical stage. So we're not on the sidelines. We are active participants in the history and activism of the world. So no longer are we going to be them that day. We are people, we have spirits, we are humans, and we have developed and contributed to this world. He was a forerunner of the current Afrocentric scholarship beginning in the 1980s as he helped create this new paradigm. So those of us who remember, we can see this real buildup of how we started coming to our culture. You see a lot of popular shows like A Different World started to focus on the HBCUs and talking about Africa. This was started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He also said that we were going to spread this knowledge through public lectures. He had teacher lesson plans, posters, plays for history performances, Black History Clubs, right, BSU. He had Black History kits and a home study department, and I didn't know about the home study department. So I just learned something myself, you guys. So the home study department, he would create courses and they would mail them out to people, so there was no excuse for us not to get the information and learn about ourselves and get an education. Dr. Woodson made it reasonable, affordable, and he made it available. So a couple of books that he wrote, we have the Journal of Negro History, Volume 1. We have the Journal of African American History, the inaugural issue, and the Journal of African American History. And so I was told some information as well about what's going on with some of the works with Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So if I were you guys, I would study and learn about this brother because things change. So please go get the information, study it, learn it, apply it to yourself, and then teach your family and friends. There we go. This brother never smiled. He was serious. Right? Serious. That looks like my father up there on that picture, just to be honest. Serious business. Serious about making sure we get educated as Black people and African people in this nation. This was used as the main textbook for teaching the history and contributions of Black people for decades. The Negro in Our History, 1922. So you see, in 1922, we were still researching, still doing the work, so this is not new. This is something that's ongoing. You know, the further we dig, the more we learn, right? So this is one of his classic books, and I know a lot of us who are in the Black Studies, African Studies Department programs, or in Ethnic Studies, you have read this book. If you're in any kind of book clubs, I know I was, this was a staple book. If you wanted to learn about Black history, African history yourself, this is one of the books that you started off with. You couldn't call yourself a scholar of Black history and African history if you haven't read this book. I suggest y'all read it. So, in the words of Dr. Woodson himself,
if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. You make a man feel he is inferior. You do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, or he will seek it himself.
Do you guys know that saying about building the door in the back? And Black folks, and eventually we just go to the back. They won't have to tell us to go through the back door, because we'll just go ourselves and build a back door for ourselves. If you teach us how, and we learn how to become inferior, then we take that on and we act as if we're inferior. But if you know who you are as a human being on this planet, as an African person, and know that your history did not start with slave ships coming from the west coast of Africa, but you are actually the builders of civilization, you straighten up your back, right? You look people in the eye, because truly you are somebody. You come from somewhere. You're not a slave. So we had influential writers such as George Hegel and Errol Toynbee claim that Africa had no history worthy of studying, and that Black people were the only group that contributed nothing to the world's civilization. Understand, and this is some of the current thinking going on in modern times. The work never stops. Dr. Woodson challenged these false claims with his publication and thorough scholarship. He said, publishing the truth is self-defense. Those of us know the law, or those of you who know the law, understand that when you start speaking the truth, you have to publish it yourself. If you're a writer, you have to tell your own stories your way. African Heritage Month, also known as Black History Month, what was Dr. Woodson's focus? His focus was on Black achievements. Black History Month, African Heritage Month is not a time for us to re-traumatize ourselves with what's happening in the media. We are more than that. We are more than your 6 o'clock news stories. We are more than seeing our brothers and sisters' bodies on the ground every day. We have achieved something. We are not the problem. We don't discuss problems faced by Black people, perpetuating the negative and racist stereotypes that Black people only represent problems. That's false. And we don't worship individual heroes such as Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Though we have folks who have done good works, we can't idolize these individuals, right? There's a danger in idolatry as well. And a narrow focus on only African American history, right? You're gonna see that this is called African Heritage Month for a reason. We just don't focus on African American history. It leaves us stagnated. It leaves us in a one state of time. We are timeless. So Woodson wrote some books on Negro makers of history. If you can find them, check them out. His scholarship also focused on African history and contributions. So if you had one of Professor Hodge, I'm sorry, Professor Hodge. If you had one of Professor Hodge's classes like I did, one of the first things she did was give you a map of Africa and made you write all the countries in there. I'm just saying that she will test you on it. So, learning about African history and contributions is very important. It's serious business because we just don't do certain things. We've done all things. You can tell by what he wrote, African myths and folk tales, the African background outlined, African heroes and heroines. So we have men and women that Dr. Woodson studied to show that we were always in this together, Black men, Black women, African men, African women. So to prove one of his points, in the Negro History Bulletin, the Negro in Art from Africa to America, Dr. Woodson writes,
Sculpture reached its first high level in ancient times under the Egyptians, the Sphinx, near the pyramids of Giza, the temple at Luxor, the rock temple at Abu Simbel, and the obelisk show the greatness of Egyptian architecture and sculpture.
the first high level. The first high level, you guys. So what I want you to take from Dr. Carter Woodson is that we have to study African history as well. We have to understand that our place in the world and our contributions in the world. This is a time and opportunity for us to celebrate who we are as an African people. This is a time to celebrate our contributions to the world, past, present, and future. So next, I want to bring up Miss Brittany Butler, Mr. Delano Rebels, Miss Helen Sanders, and Miss Aisha Walker to talk about some of the things they have learned in studying in our department and under our African American professors. Would y'all please come to the stage?
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Aisha Walker, and it feels so good to be back on the stage. I want to thank Professor Manu for inviting me back, as this has been a huge, life-changing experience for me as a former student, as an alum here at Contra Costa College. I want to thank everybody who has contributed to my educational experiences. I remember the last time that I was on this stage, I'm laughing to myself because it was the Black graduation, and there was an elder in the hall who had scolded me for being late. But I was late because I was just photographing the First Lady's first commencement speech, and Professor Hodge saved me that day because she named that in that moment, but I just remember that. And the other times that I was here on the stage was dancing with Latanya Tigner, Professor Latanya Tigner, and also Professor Legends, Deborah Vaughn, right here on the stage. This was the place that helped shape my identity. I remember as a little girl, I was a little girl, and in 6th grade, I went to school right here in Richmond at Meestrom Elementary, and there was my teacher, Miss Ryman, who would show us these images of Kemet. And as a little girl, I felt like it was just so magical and such an amazing place to be that I wanted to travel there. I wanted to see what it was like. And I remember taking, fast forward to my college years, I had a whole speech prepared, and I just threw it out the window because I just got so inspired being here up here on the stage again. But fast forward to my time in Professor Manu's class, in Professor Hodge's class, Dr. Pointer's class, Professor McLean's classes, like these were the ones that shaped me. And I remember, yes, absolutely. You have legends right here in this building. He took it upon himself to give us the highest caliber of education. I remember I went to UCLA, shout out to the Bruins because I know we in here. I went to education, I got my education at UCLA, and I'm gonna say this and bring it back to my point about me being a little girl. But I got my education at UCLA, and I remember being prepared because of the work that my professors here put in with us. That education was much easier than my education at CC College. I studied world arts and cultures, and I took the legacies that were taught from here to my work at to my education at UCLA, and I continue it now. But I remember being in Professor Mayu's class, and he would talk to us so much about about the blackness of Kemet, how this is ours. I remember something he would always say was that, Europe would be in the dark ages at the time where Kemet was at its highest, and that we laid the foundation for all of civilization. And I remember sending an email to Professor Manu asking him for some support with some project, and he called me immediately. And it was the footer in my email that named that I was a photographer. And it was from then that Professor Manu helped me to fundraise, to travel to Kemet, to bring my dream as a little girl to travel to the motherland and to go to Egypt and to see firsthand what you always talked about, which was the de-Africanization of Kemet. There are a couple of images that really stuck with me when I traveled to Kemet with Professor Manu and with the group of us that were there. One of them was we were in the temple walls in Cairo. We were in the temple in Cairo. I forget which one it was. And there was a man there who had a bucket of cement. And on the walls, he was taking the cement and covering the ancient inscriptions on the walls, which made me, it just gave truth, so much truth and so much evidence to what Professor Manu would talk about all the time. But the other image that stuck with me was the images and the artifacts that I saw at Luxor, the museum at Luxor, when we traveled there, because it was those monuments that I remember that looked just like my cousin. I'm like, this looks just like my cousin right here. And those stuck with me forever. So now my work is through Be Imaginative. It's an Emmy Award-winning organization dedicated to healing our communities through creative storytelling. Thank you. We do a lot of work with healing the immense grief of our community. So I love what you talked about when you said that we are so much more than the news, what the news portrays us, and that it was Nina Simone that said that it is an artist's duty to reflect the times, and that we must, no matter what, continue to protect our imaginations, to protect our legacies, and to tell the stories of empowerment. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Aisha. That was wonderful, and it encouraged me. And, I find so many similarities with what you spoke of in Professor Manu's and Professor Hodges' classes, as well as all my current professors. By the way, my name is Helen Sanders, and I am a longtime student at Contra Costa College. I have taken many classes, but I really enjoyed taking the African American Studies class here at Contra Costa College. I grew up in San Pablo, Richmond area, and was educated through Richmond Unified School District, if that tells you about how old I am. My education was whitewashed. My true education came from Contra Costa College, and specifically classes with Professor Ampin. One of his main statements that he would say over and over again would be, documentation beats conversation. And if you know anything about this professor, you will never forget that statement. So I also have attended many lectures with Professor Ampin, as well as the October 2022 Kushite Nubian Heritage Conference. It was very enlightening, and it was wonderful to hear different ways of putting uh, statements together about Africa itself and about the Nile Valley. Um, I do encourage many people to take classes at Contra Costa College and tell them if they want a great experience, take the African American studies classes. You will get an education unto itself. At one point in time, my family, myself, my husband, and our 7 children, all attended at the same time here at Contra Costa, as well as I think 3 or 4 of us specifically in Professor Ampin's class, which Mrs. drove him nuts on the roll call. Because if he knew one of us was there, we all were there. Let's see. So I absolutely love the education I have received, and I continue my study here at Contra Costa College. I wouldn't change a thing other than getting my true education early on. And I thank you, Professor, for everything, as well as Professor Hodge. I am glad you retired, but I am sorry you retired because you have a wealth of information. And I know that through uh, the AA studies, that uh, it will benefit more people than just me. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Brittany Butler. I was a part of the first cohort of the Paramount Academy in 2015. Um, I'd say it was really important, and just to reflect, and just to say we need community more now than ever, and just reflecting on how important that community was to me when I first started here. Professor Hodge, she's educated my father, me, and my 2 other sisters. So she's just really a guardian who's providing a plethora of tools for us to succeed and be successful. Um, yeah, um, and just taking her and Professor MPM's classes. It was the first time I was actually able to see myself in the history of Black people and what we've done and continue to do and continue to go through. And after CC, I went to Berkeley and majored in Black Studies and Anthropology. Then I ended up at San Jose State and become a librarian. And now I'm actually one of the youngest professors at Cal State East Bay. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, it's just beautiful to see this, and you all are just really beacons of light for the community. So thank you.
Okay, so I prepared something because I'm nervous. How y'all doing? Hello, everybody, faculty, classified, friends, family, neighbors, community. My name is Delano Revels, and I'm an alumni at CCC. I graduated spring 2022 with 4 degrees. My main focus of study is African American studies. I can't say too much more than what the last 3 people just said about Professor Hampton and Professor Hodge. I'm truly blessed and thankful to have had them in my life. The pandemic was really hard, and these 2 professors really breathed in me and breathed life into me, and it's definitely afforded me to be where I am today. So a little bit about me. I actually received a scholarship from the African American Staff Association last year to go on a classical African educational tour in Kemet. And I was doing that for 2022. So being my first trip out the country, it really opened my eyes to the vastness of the world, the power of propaganda, and the significance of treasuring knowledge. I now understand the importance of seeing things firsthand and engaging in primary research. And I can share my knowledge that I've gained with everybody else who's not been able to see that. I currently am a junior at San Francisco State University. studying Africana studies, and I'm in the process of debating on if I'm picking up a nutrition minor. I also I work on campus here. I'm a program coordinator for our African American Male Leadership Program. I also do recruitment and outreach for our Gateway to College program, which focuses on giving students a second chance at alternative school to right the ship and get into a four-year institution. Um, I believe being a genuine and nurturing person, along with being professional and driven, is essential for the type of work that we're doing, which is community building. Uh, and so on campus, I just want to highlight a few of the things that we're trying to accomplish for Black identified students, and a lot of this work stems directly from the lessons learned in these classes and on the trip. So currently, I am a co-advisor of the Black Student Union on campus. We are starting a social support group on campus called Young Black Leaders, focusing on a lot of community outreach. We also are starting a student-led podcast network, which will be released bi-monthly on the YouTube channel. We are working in a partnership now, trying to work with the foundation to create a few more scholarships for our Black identified students. Right now we're looking at 2 annual $500 scholarships for BSU participants, and possibly one scholarship of $1,000 annually through the African American Male Leadership Program. We're looking at having an annual dinner at the Aquaterra Grill to help sustain these scholarships moving forward, because we need some type of long-term sustained excellence for our Black identified students. So just a few of the things that I want to highlight: the community service partnerships that I've already been cultivated through years of my own personal resource and sweat equity. Men of Influence in Oakland, Black Culture Zone in Oakland, the Salvation Army, the Bay Area Rescue Mission, and I'm also tied in with the WCCUSD, Black Student Union. Outside of that, we really want to focus on a lot of career and professional development for these students in terms of training and workshop. We are tied in with the Career Center on campus, the Transfer Center, Workforce Development, the ASU, the African American Staff Association, First Year Experience, the Welcome Center, and tutoring. I hope I don't leave nobody out there. Just a few of the things. I don't really want to ramble, but we got resume workshops. We're working on free haircut events, interview skills workshops, internships behind graphic design. There's tons of student ambassadorship jobs that are available on campus, as well as gateway hourly opportunities. I'm sorry. We also are focusing on tons of more community building events, so we would like to see you guys come out more. We are definitely looking at things like open mic events, so we can get some poetry going, get some free spoken word going, just to set a mood on campus and set a precedent of building community and moving things forward. We are also looking at youth seminar, and talks. We're going to the A2Men conference in LA this March. So it's just a lot of things going on. I don't want to talk too long. I'm glad you guys came out tonight, gave us a little bit of your time, and I'm so thankful to be able to be a part of this. Thank you.
Okay, next we have some faculty reflections from the African American Studies program. We have Professor Nzinga. Come on up, Professor Ashley, Professor Terrence Ivory, and Ms. Christina Craig Chardon. If y'all could please come to the stage. We would like to give y'all 3 minutes to show who you are and showcase your programs and what you do.
Greetings. I'm Terrence Ivory. I'm the facilitator instructor for African American Theater. Truly blessed. Hope that you're doing well in good spirits. I'd like to tell you a quick story here. When I was a graduate student at the Actors Studio in New York City, there was a show that came on at one part of time was called Inside the Actors Studio, and the host was James Lipton. So imagine, if you will, Samuel Jackson's there that night, And if you go back, you look through YouTube, you see these eager students sitting maybe in the first 3 aisles. I was one of those eager students. And what was really indelible that evening is that Samuel Jackson talked about his experience being part of the Negro Ensemble Company. And he talked about how, this is so beautiful, he talked about how Denzel Washington was part of a soldier's play, which originally was called A Soldier's Story by Charles Fuller. So they're part of the Negro Ensemble Company. Denzel Washington is plucked out of the ensemble to do his first TV series, which was Sing Elsewhere, right? Now, this is the part I got so excited about. Samuel Jackson said he knew it was only a matter of time before he would experience that same type of success because he was surrounded by greatness. Oh, where am I going with this? Have you ever wanted to be a part of something bigger than yourselves? Join AFRA. Join African American Studies and be a part of greatness.
I just want to take a moment and just look at everybody. This is beautiful. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Okay, do me a favor, and I promise I'll stick to the 3 minutes. Do me a favor, look to your neighbor, and if you would say to your neighbor, African history is world history. A little bit louder, African history is world history. That's the instructor in me, right? I know we got a prompt and we were asked to say a few words, but I think we have to say it as much as we can, that African history is not just the history of the United States, it is the history of the world. And it wasn't until I took African American Studies courses at San Francisco State, my alma mater, and that I understood that it was world history. And when you take African American Studies, folks, it's different. When you take it at a department that not only teaches you high-level thinking, high-level research, and love of self. There's no other department that I've experienced, and I've been through a lot of them, that teaches that. And so one of the things, just in thinking about African American Studies, and the reason why I have been involved with it all of my life, I didn't start off as an African American Studies major, I started off as a psychology major, and then took one African American Studies class because I was struggling in psychology because they weren't studying us as part of humanity, they were objectifying us. When I took one, I took damn near every Black Studies course at San Francisco State that it was possible to take because it changed my life. It changed my direction, and it showed me how important we are the center of who we are and how we talk about one another. And so there's a piece that Carter G. Woodson also talks about when he talks about African American history. And that piece is so important, which I try to teach my students that Asante talks about, and I'll leave it here, is that if we're not the subject of our understanding, of our meaning, of our experience, then we become the object of somebody else's story. And my students here know that I start with a proverb that says, as long as the hunter, y'all know what I'm talking about, is the one telling the story, right? Right, y'all? Then the hunter's always gonna glorify what happened. And the hunted never gets to tell the truth of what happened in the story. And that's what Africana Study does. It tells the story of what really happened, and in doing that, it lifts up the story for other stories to be told. So if you wanna raise your consciousness, raise your thinking, get some of the African American Studies.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Aaron. I've had the honor and the privilege of teaching both in African American Studies and in history here at Contra Costa College. I taught Afrin 21, 22, 113, 120, basically anything they knew and Carolyn asked them. Okay. I also, I got one. I first came here to Contra Costa College in 2013. Professor Carolyn Hodge asked me to teach a high school class for West Contra Costa Unified School District. So I was teaching at El Cerrito High. And and I was given the honor to come teach on campus, and almost 10 years later, I'm still here. It has been it's been powerful to me to see myself reflected in students, to see students come back to whatever class I'm teaching at the moment, and to hear the stories that students have about the experiences that they've had with Professor Ampim and Professor Hodge, the deep legacy that they've left on this campus and in this community, I think is something that, we talk about documentation. I think we need to have more documentation of that and the beautiful work that's been done here at Contra Costa. So, come through. I got a lot of work for you, but you're going to learn a lot. Okay, thank you.
I love that. Come through, but I got work for you. No. You ready for that? So, my first introduction to Africana Studies, Black History, was when I was in high school. I had come up to the Bay Area. I'm originally from LA County, and my older sister was graduating from Berkeley, and we went to Black Grad. I came to Black Grad with my family, and my sister had her line sister. She's part of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as they would say, right? And they're, doing their little thing and, coming in, and that's they were coming in hot, right? And as folks are crossing the stage and their degrees are being read, I'm hearing Bachelor of Arts, Black Studies, Bachelor of Arts, Black Studies. And so I kind of laughed to myself, like, well, what are you supposed to do with that? You're supposed to become a teacher and teach other people how to become Black Studies majors? Short answer is yes, since that's why I'm here. And then my second introduction was when I became a college student. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I took my first African American Studies class. And I'm sitting there, in a room not unlike this one, and the professor walks in. He's wearing his hat on backwards, sunglasses, sweatshirt, briefcase, and he puts the briefcase down and commences to teach. And me and the other students are writing furiously. And what I realized in that moment was that, one, I had never had a Black teacher before. And two, I didn't know anything that he was talking about, right? Through 14 years of education, that includes preschool and kindergarten, you continue to learn about US history. And I was taking an African American Studies class, and I knew nothing. I knew nothing of myself and nothing of my people. Right? And so the long answer to the question that I asked myself at Black Grad as a high school student of, what are you supposed to do with that, and why would you do that, is that at every point in my life, my history, my culture, and my people always rose to greet me. So when I was a college student, not sure of what I was going to major in, it showed me the way. When I decided to cut off all of my hair, to get rid of the perm, so I could learn to love myself in a new kind of way, it was there, right? When I got married and I jumped the broom, right, I'm bringing my culture and my history with me. When I became a mother and I learned how to mother, that's because of my people and my history. The way that I'm carving out my career is because of my people and my history. Right? So it's the joy of Black culture, it's the joy of Black history that's the reason why I'm here and the reason why I teach. And I just want my students to feel that joy, and maybe learning their history can help them fall in love with themselves as well.
Thank y'all so much. It goes to show that the influence of our instructors in the past and in the present can really direct and change our future. Like sometimes we don't know what we're going to do. And so I didn't know what I was going to do when I came here as well as a student. And so I took Professor Hodges' class, every last one of them. And let me tell y'all, she, in the African American Studies department, really prep you for your 4-year transfer. The rigor in her class is well prepared me for the 4-year university level of writing and education. And sometimes I was amazed at what some of these people were writing in their classes and how they were writing in their classes, because what I learned in my AFRAM classes is we had a higher level of responsibility and accountability and education. And so what you learn is you learn how to communicate, you learn how to write, you learn how to express yourself, and you actually are well prepared for what the future holds for you. So take AFRAM, y'all. Like the professor already told you what to do. You know, just do it. Just take the class. Challenge yourself. Just take one class amongst your other classes, and you'll see it'll make life a lot more fun. Trust me. Those 10-page papers. But anyway, so next we have Professor Manu Ampium. He's our professor of history and Africana studies here at Contra College. He also does study abroad tours to Kemet. This summer he's going to Kemet in Ethiopia. So if you are interested, get your passport, get your shots, get your money together, and talk to Professor Maynard Ampium about the wonderful experience that you will have when you go on these tours. So hopefully I'll be going to Ethiopia this summer with Professor Manu, because I'm going to live there eventually, hopefully. So, presenting resistance and the preservation of African cultural traditions, I bring to y'all Professor Manu Ampium.
How's everybody?
Good.
Greetings, good evening, and to the Costa Community Hotel.
Hotel.
Simply means peace. Hotel. Anyway, good to see everybody tonight. I want to really address our theme, which, as you see, it's resistance to the preservation of African cultural traditions. And I'm glad to be able to follow my colleagues who gave me a good idea of why people should take classes in Africana studies and why it's such a central discipline. And you've heard from some of our students, former students, and there are others that are here tonight as well. I just want to introduce the topic to you so you get a pretty good idea of why it is that we lead by example, that we have a unique tradition here that goes back about a quarter century, where we follow in the footsteps of Carter G. Woodson, and that's rare that people follow what his work really is about. So we call it African Heritage Month because that's the direction and the focus of the man who's the reason for the season. So I want to share with you just a little bit, and I want to turn over to a colleague who can give you insight about the influence of African cultural traditions here in the Western Hemisphere. And this is one of my latest books, History of African Civilizations. It's part of my ongoing work in multiple countries around the world to do original, first-hand, or what we call primary research. It's okay to read books by others, but it's more important to go directly to the source. And that's what I've been doing now for over 30 years, and that's what we bring to the classroom. This man is one of the great unsung heroes in the 20th century. His work continues more than a century after he began the great work. And it's interesting that a lot of people will celebrate February and they don't even know the name of Woodson. They've never heard of Woodson. They just think it's just another time to get together. But for us, it's to follow in the footsteps of one of the greatest men in the 20th century to continue to work. And let me point something out because Erica had mentioned something and she showed some slides. But let me reiterate the influence of Woodson. These are the last two books that he wrote. The last two books. You take a look, the African background and African heroes and heroines. So it's important to know that as Woodson talked about not only at Black History Week, he envisioned an entire year. He spoke consistently about an entire year, and as Woodson did more and more of his work as a great educator and historian, he focused more and more on Africa. So this is why, when you saw the slide earlier, that the focus is not only the experience here in the U.S., it's not only African American history and culture, that's important, but that's a small part of the overall global influence that Woodson focused on. So if anybody's focusing just on the experience here, they're not following Woodson in totality, because these are the last two books he wrote. What about his last articles? I'm glad you asked. Let me show you. Woodson's his last three articles that he wrote in his great scholarship. And it's a three-part series on Egypt. And in case you don't really know the geography, I want to make sure that you know that Egypt is a part of Africa. And by the way, I have a standing commitment with every pilot that when I'm traveling to Africa, the commitment and the agreement is that no matter where I'm going, whether it's any part of Africa, we have to touch down in Egypt so I can make sure that it didn't detach itself from Africa and float off to the Middle East somewhere. You know, so that's really what people think. They don't know that it's part of the African continent. But this is the last series of writings by Woodson. And who remembers what year this great scholar passed? Do you remember what year he passed? 1950. So check out the articles. These are the last three that he wrote. So somebody who's focusing on Woodson must embrace the full scope of Woodson's work. And by the way, the reason why we call it Africana studies is because it relates to Africa and the experience and influence and contributions of Black people around the world. So African American deals primarily, African American studies, with the experience of Black people where? In the U.S. So we've gone beyond that because we're following in the tradition of Woodson. So I wanted to just make sure that you're aware that we are following in his footsteps, and that's why we focus on it as African Heritage Month. But I want to just share a few words before I ask one of my colleagues to come up and give you some details of the Western Hemisphere. But this area right here in West Africa has been kind of talked about and popular lately with some of the movies like Black Panther and so forth. They've taken some, that's by the way, that's myth and fiction. So be careful with promoting that as if it's history. It's not. But nevertheless, they've taken some influence from this area here, and this is the area that I'm referring to, the area of Benin and Togo, and a little bit of Nigeria. This area here, you have cultural traditions that continue. These are very powerful traditions that are not just a part of any religion. They're integrated into culture. When you do field work and be among the people, you recognize that there's no separate thing called religion. It's integrated into culture. Now you may have a spiritual chief who's head, or a great spiritual leader that's head of ritual and ceremony, but that's not something separate where they just deal with it on Sunday and then forget about it the rest of the week. It's not like that. It's totally integrated into culture. So when Africans left these areas and came here to the U.S., they brought, into the Western Hemisphere, they brought their culture with them. This is absolutely important to know. So, for example, voodoo. Voodoo, it means spirit in the Fon language of Benin. And you may not know it as voodoo. A lot of people, they know it as what? As so-called voodoo. But the issue is that they never called it voodoo. So people don't know much at all about voodoo, but when they hear it, they're ready to run off. You know, come back. We got to get them to come back and listen, but they're ready to sprint away. And the reason why they're ready to sprint off when they hear about it is because it's been made negative by the Americans, by the French, by the British. The reason why is because Africans used their cultural tradition to fight off and defend against slavery. So they made it negative. So anytime somebody hears voodoo, they're ready to take off with the best of them, and they can't tell you what it is that they're even running from. They think about voodoo doll and some other craziness, but this was to villainize the culture in order to try to stamp out the essence of the resistance. So Africans became free because they were able to use their culture as a weapon against the French enslavers and all the other enslavers. So it's important to know that this tradition is absolutely very powerful, and they brought that to the Western Hemisphere. So it's a spiritual system, so-called religion, but it's very important to know that they use divination to be able to learn about the future, to have insight about what to expect. And it's about possession as well. And I know somebody said, well, I'm a Christian, I don't believe in all. It's not about belief. It's about people understanding that the greatest part of reality is the spirit world. And but people experience it in ways that they don't really control it. You know, it might be a ghost or some ancestor might appear to them and they're shocked by it. But they have a whole system of communication, and that was a part of their system and their culture. So let me just point out things, and it's always connected to the ancestors as well. But it's one of the only traditions really that survived in the Western Hemisphere. This is why voodoo has made such a uh, indelible imprint here in the U.S. and in the Western Hemisphere in general. And also, but it's portrayed as negative because of the cultural resistance that took place. And if you look at the power and influence of voodoo, it's been very significant in the entire region. So we can look at, what state is this, by the way? Louisiana. Okay, very good. Because if you can't get geography straight, you can't get history straight. You're right. This is Louisiana. So it's a tremendous influence of people coming not only from the West African region, but also from the middle part of Africa, from the Congo, to bring their cultural lifeways there and to use that to perpetuate and continue the cultural traditions. So if we look even more specifically, New Orleans. Any of you been to New Orleans? You've been there, and you know about what area of New Orleans is important.
French Quarter.
In the French quarters, okay, but in terms of culture, yeah, Congo Square. So exactly. So we look at Congo Square, and this has always had a tremendous influence on foreigners and outsiders as they were impressed, and they tried to also suppress the rituals and ceremonies, but the Africans were allowed to do their thing, to trade, to communicate, to dance, to drum on Sundays. And this was a great tradition for years, for generations, actually for centuries, until Hurricane Katrina came around in 2005 and destroyed that area. But before that, people could go, they could drum, and I think it's coming back now, but this is one of the most important experiences where Africans use their cultural traditions to maintain their humanity and continue to make contributions for the ages. And so if you go now, you'll see the indelible imprint made by Africans bringing their culture with them to survive and also to thrive. How about that? People enslaved can come out teaching ethics, teaching morality, teaching other people how to stand up and be humans. So we can look at the experience in New Orleans and know that it goes back to a very powerful tradition. And these people don't play. They definitely don't play when it comes to the rituals, the ceremonies, the divinations, and if you've ever been to any of the rituals, you know that people are serious about it. Absolutely serious. Yeah, they're absolutely serious then, and they're serious now. And you talk about people that have tremendous powers, yeah, very much. But people think that it's about getting a voodoo doll and causing pain on somebody. It's not about that. It's a religion to heal. They know how to use potions and herbs to heal. But guess what? I bet everybody in the room, you're familiar with the pharmacy, am I correct? You go to the pharmacy, there's always instructions. Because what can heal can also what? It can kill. Take too much, take it too often, whatever it may be, you can harm yourself. So a pharmacy must have a direction. So what can heal can also kill. That's how it is in the religious traditions. They're not looking to go inflict pain on anybody, but they certainly know how to manipulate energy and deal with the spirit world on a level that a lot of people are not too familiar with, but it empowers them. And this is why they were able to maintain their cultural lifeways. But it's not only in places like New Orleans. We can look at Haiti. And the experience in Haiti, very important. What's important about Haiti, you might ask?
A revolution.
After the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, Africans in Haiti led a rebellion against Napoleon and the French that became the first independent black nation in the history of the modern world. They overthrew slavery and created an independent republic. They went to the mountains, and it was priests like Boukman who used the culture of voodoo to overthrow French slavery. And this is why they started to villainize the cultural practices, because it was the very weapon, the tool, the sword to overthrow the vicious slave system in Haiti. And that influence had an indelible imprint in the entire Western Hemisphere. And you know who the U.S. president was at the time? Thomas Jefferson. He was very concerned. As a slaveholder, he was concerned about what was happening because people left Haiti and they came to the U.S. and had a direct influence on rebellions. So it was their religious tradition that was villainized, and that's when voodoo becomes voodoo, where people have to run off in fear because of this great culture. And so I want to transition and just have a colleague, let me introduce him, to discuss the African culture in Haiti, even today. Because I think you probably heard that Haiti's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. You've heard that before? Well, it's the reason for that. They're not poor in resources, they're not poor in spirit, they're poor because of the French and the American response to the Haitians becoming independent. So I want to introduce you to discuss that to my colleague Pierre uh, de Brossier. He's an activist, and but I wanted to talk about the ongoing traditional African practices in Haiti, and he's someone who has firsthand knowledge. He's the co-founder of the Haitian Action Committee. He also helped to found the Haitian Emergency Relief Fund, which was established here in the Bay Area. The Haiti Action Committee was in 1991, and the Emergency Relief Fund was in 2004. And he's worked as an activist to assist refugees. And because the Haitians, you remember what happened to the Haitians, they were pushed out by the Americans, they were abused. And so Brother Pierre is somebody that helps to support the people from Haiti who are not given the same respect that they should be given. He's been based, he came in New York some years ago, he's been here in Oakland, and wherever you have anybody speaking about Haiti, you have Pierre, Brother Pierre, there in the trenches being consistently consistent over a consistent period of time. And that's what leadership is really all about. So Brother Pierre, if you, I know you're here somewhere, so okay, there you go. So I want our good brother to share with you his knowledge and his insight about the traditional African practices in Haiti, his home country. He's a very good brother that I've been knowing for a while, and he's well known because of his consistent activism in support of our brothers and sisters in Haiti. And he certainly knows about the African tradition. Thank you very much.
Good evening, sisters and brothers. I would really, I can tell you my joy, and I want to thank Professor Manu for inviting me. And I can tell you my joy being here listening to all this wisdom here, soaking up so much knowledge, being among you and exchanging and building. And thank you so much, Professor Menon, for the introduction about Haiti. And yes, we are in the process of nation building in Haiti. In spite of all that you hear, in spite of all these obstacles that are in our way, as a nation, we are building the country. I'll give you a quick example. I was in a rural Haiti a few years back, maybe 15 years ago. And I ran into this youngster who was visiting a fort named Fort Jacques, named after Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the great Haitian leader who achieved independence and defeated the troops of Napoleon. This kid must have been about 13 or 14 years old. So my brother and I were full of reverence in that fort, because after all, it's a major place. And this kid was tagging along, so we figured, well, and he was just chattering endlessly. And we said, how do we get rid of this kid? Maybe he needs some money. So my brother gave him some money, and but the kid kept tagging along and telling us. And after a while, he was learning the history of the area. That's what we realized. And he was telling us things we didn't know. So my brother thought he would test him and ask him some questions. You know, after all, we had that formal French education, and we grew up in the US. And the kid was responding with more and more details. And my brother said, "Where do you learn all that stuff? What school do you go to?" He said, "I don't go to school." He said, "I go to school maybe 2 months out of the year when my parents are gathering enough money and they'll send me, but as soon as the money runs out, they kick me out and I'm out here." "Where did you learn all that?" He said, "Well, from the old folks." He said, "I'm from the area. And the old folks tell me everything." This kid knew what the composition of the cement that was used to build the fort. He knew all of that. And the reason I know is because my brother, who was an historian, my oldest brother, told me some of the stuff. But I raised this to tell you, and that day we just hugged the kid and we said, "Man, Haiti is not dead. Haiti will never perish." Because it's that fire that Bob Marley talks about, which is in us as an African people. When the French came and they kidnapped our foremothers and forefathers from the African continent, contrary to the thousand movies we were being brainwashed with when I was growing up in the 60s in Haiti, can you believe that? We were brainwashed with thousand movies, and then we had this French education that was telling us that we were inferior. They wouldn't use that term, but everything was, white people invented everything, meaning that we never did anything. And we had some Haitian intellectuals who actually believed that and incorporated that in their system. And that's why today we are having so many problems there as well, because of the miseducation of the Negro. And so what we are seeing is that our foremothers and forefathers, and I'm glad you mentioned voodoo, that was the spirit in them when they were kidnapped, going through the horrors of the Middle Passage. First, the trek into from the kidnapping to the shores, and then that horrible experience, the Middle Passage, and the dehumanization continued with the plantation system. And so they were being told they were nobodies. But they had that belief and that strong, and their spirituality helped them so that they knew they were people who were from communities, stable societies. Some of them were engineers, some of them were farmers, they were shoemakers, they had all kinds of intellectual and capabilities. And they were moving forward very well. And so slavery wasn't in themselves. They were being imposed, they were put in chains. But what they did was they said, "Look, we got to break the chains and we got to build this land, we got to build this nation." There is a man, I'll mention his name was Macandal. Macandal started the first countrywide rebellion. But in his mind, he also saw freeing the land and building a nation. So it wasn't just to break the chains, but it was also to rebuild the land with a philosophy that determined who they were as a people. And Macandal launched a big slave uprising. He knew plants very well. He knew how to heal, he knew how to kill. And Brother Macandal was unfortunately burned alive, but he had told the people they can never kill me because I will turn into a mosquito and come back and harvest them. And to this day, some of the old folks would tell little kids, "Be careful in the woods, Macandal is there." To keep us in line, so to speak. And so it was that spirit. But how our people came together, and after 13-year war, they defeated that the greatest of the great generals that Europe had produced, Napoleon Bonaparte. These were Africans. At the time of the uprising in 1791, 2/3 of the enslaved Africans were born in Africa. So they brought their traditions, they brought their fighting spirit with them. There is a video, I don't know if you the tradition of the fighting and their skills remains alive today in Haiti because there are training centers in, in families that teach young people how to use sticks to defend themselves, machetes to defend themselves, and what have you. And they are very skilled at it. But also the nation had to defend itself. The nation had to first defeat the French, but also conceive of how to reorganize this. And one of the things they had to deal with is how to feed the nation, how to organize it, how to bring a nation into the modern world. And that's what our people were doing. They started doing it, and where did they do it? They started learning it as Maroons when they escaped. They went into the mountains, they went into various places and started reorganizing the agricultural infrastructure that was laying the foundation for the new nation. And so as people were fleeing from the plantation into the mountains and into other communities, they were also practicing their craft, which was their military skills, because many of them were military leaders. For example, Sister Cécile Fatima, who did the uprising with Bookman, she was a very skilled woman. The great Jean-Jacques Dessalines leader was trained by a woman named Matoya. She had been a warrior, she was a military leader. She had been a military leader in Africa when she was kidnapped. And she trained Dessalines and many of the young men in the art of war. And so there were others like Mary Jane, brilliant military strategist, Sanet Belair, many of the women. And they got that from the African continent because in their tradition in Africa, the women were not subservient. They had leadership role, both in terms of as being spiritual leaders, as Professor Menou stated, and also leaders in the community, in whatever was going on in the daily lives of the community. And so these folks establish the system of creating the beginning, the infrastructure in the interior of Haiti. So that by the time independence came, 1804, when they finally defeated the French, and by the way, they defeated the French, the British, and Spanish, not just some squadron of Spanish, but they defeated generals from Spain, generals from Britain, and some of the best generals from Napoleon's army. But at the time when Haiti declared itself an independent nation, they didn't see themselves as Haiti. They saw themselves as an African people. There were what they say in Creole, 21 nations, that means the 21 nations. 21 nations being from different parts of Africa. And they came together, and I can say that it's a successful pan-Africanist revolution. When they become independent, they could have taken the name Dahomey or Congo or Angola, because many of them were from there. But no, they took the name Haiti for two reasons. One, it was the original name of that given by the indigenous people whom Christopher Columbus had destroyed. And secondly, in one of the African languages, it means do not obey, according to President Aristide. So what you have, and they didn't stop there, their whole vision was also one that was wholesome. It was about bringing their family together. Remember during that period, they had kidnapped families and sent families in different parts. So Haiti declared itself a sanctuary nation and called upon black people to make their way to Haiti. And actually, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the leader, used to make contacts with ships that were bringing our foremothers and forefathers from Africa and entice them with money to come and bring the brothers and sisters to Haiti. And Haiti said it would make them Haitian citizens and declare them citizens, and Haiti would fight for their freedom. Haiti declared sanctuary also to indigenous people. So I'm raising all of this to say that it was very profound, and black people worldwide picked up on it. New Orleans, that whole Louisiana territory, not just the state of Louisiana, it went from New Orleans all the way to the Canadian border. I forget, close to 8 or 9 states that it represents. That territory, France had to sell it back to the French, to sell it to the US. It never was theirs anyway. It belonged to the original people. But they took it and they had to sell it to Thomas Jefferson because of the defeat that they suffered in Haiti. So people in the US, black folks, heard about this. And black folks were inspired. Remember, at that time, they were Africans. And the idea that Africans, their fellow, could be cousin so and so, could be my sister over there. They were doing great, and it inspired them to say, we can do it too, not Turner, then Malvisi, can be a Costa. And so the whole idea was to bring the family together. One of the dreams of Toussaint Louverture on the military side was to raise an army to go to Africa and put an end to the slave trade there, the slave trade. He never accomplished that because the French kidnapped him. However, Dessalines and Pétion, who survived, did send an army of black folks to help Simon Bolivar in South America to free the countries of South America and to abolish slavery in those countries. Haitian volunteers, many of them from my hometown, did that. They went with Bolivar, gave him ships and guns and people to do that and to end slavery. So I raise this to say that the achievements of our people, not just on the military side, but the production, for example, growing up in Haiti, I grew up with African folks, African tradition, African know-how, because in the interior, our people are excluded from having that formal European education. What kept them alive? What kept them from going from a nation of 250,000? Because at the time of the revolution, it was 500 enslaved Africans. Half of them perished during the revolution. From 250,000, today we're a nation of 12.5 million people. It was the economy of Haiti, the economy of our brothers and sisters in the interior that developed that nation. The money that the French stole from us, extorted from us, to force us to pay ransom. And it wasn't just the French, they were not strong enough to do it, but it was with the help of the US, Britain, Spain, all those kingdoms that relied on the enslavement of our people, ganged up together and threatened to obliterate Haiti in a big coalition and then reduce our people once again to enslave the Haitians. So we, at the time, the president had to make a decision, contrary to what the masses of our brothers and sisters wanted. He made the decision to give that money to the French. And to this day, that money from 1825 until 1952, Haiti had to pay huge amounts of money, the equivalent of 28 in today's money, $28 billion to the French. So when they are saying the poorest people in the Western Hemisphere, we are one of the most robbed people in the Western Hemisphere. They come over and they steal our resources. But even with all of that, our people are, the technology I started talking about, all the production, the agricultural production, and how they were transforming what was being produced, manioc, yams, all the dishes there, all the things that I as a kid loved to eat, that really kept me healthy and strong. I never grew up with a refrigerator. And I left it in 1970, and I never missed it. I didn't know what, well, I knew there was somebody's house had it, but it was very few. But it was the technology, how to preserve the food, how to have so many dishes, how to take the raw agricultural product and transform it into something. I used to make kites as a kid. The glue was made by the people, the local people made the glue that I was using as a kid. But what's happening, we are talking about preserving our cultural heritage. What's happening right now is that our people no longer eat cassava. I mean, Many of us still do, but really spaghetti has spread all over Haiti. And I went there and I was shocked. What's going on? That beautiful repertoire of music. There must be over 100 dances, traditional dances. And by the way, the rhythm of the drums. People will tell you, I'm going to dance the Congo. I'm going to dance the Yanvalu. I'm going to dance Raga. I'm going to dance Petro. You see, this is how Africa continues to be alive in our culture. You mentioned Vodou, the Loas. The Loas are the spirits of our ancestors. There are some that were brought over from Africa, but others were born right there on the island. And our people, we do worship, not worship, that's the wrong word to use, but we are in communication with the spirits of our ancestors. They are our models and our guides. And so this is what keeps the Haitian spirit alive. I was very surprised, and I'm going to finish in a minute there. Thank you, Professor Mena. And I was very surprised when I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was telling me there was some Haitian drumming taking place. And he said, oh man, now I'm a Christian, I'm saved, I can't listen to that music. I said, brother, what's wrong with you? I said, something is seriously a problem. So, in today's Haiti, they are making us, when I say they, there is a big move by Europeans, by people who are colonialists, to make our people run away from voodoo, to make our people feel that their culture is not superior. They talk about informal economy. And I challenge that. There's nothing informal. An economy that has built a nation for over 200 years and is keeping 12.5 million people alive. Nothing is informal about it. It's the formal economy. The informal one is the one that's right there on the seashore that's being imposed outside of Haiti on our people. So I will close by saying this. If any of you, I don't encourage you to go to Haiti right now because it's like a war zone. They are trying to, what they call low intensity warfare against our brothers and sisters. But it's not going to last forever. It's going to stop. And I invite you to go to the Citadel. I know many, and I'm sorry, Professor Meno, can I have a couple of seconds? Yeah. So many of you have been to the door the door of no return in Africa. But I was telling a friend of mine, I said, no, you need to, that's good, that's important that we go and pay our respect. But you need to visit the Citadel in northern Haiti to see what our African ancestors have built on top of a mountain. Not only did they build it to determine, to as a big fortress, to tell the French, you come to try to enslave us, we bomb the daylight out of you. Black folks were making their own cannons there. The great Henry Christophe from Grenada was part of the Haitian Revolution. And they created a foundry there. It's impressive even to this day. And it's magnificent. And it stood as a monument against colonialism, against slavery. So it's good, the door of no return, but we need to also value what we have accomplished, both in terms of architecture and what we have accomplished in terms of our greatness as a people. So in closing, I want to say that there is a gentleman named Antinor Fiume. Many of you are not familiar with him. He's a Haitian guy who lived in the late 1800s. But when the French racist named Gobineau wrote the book to say that black people were inferior, Antinor Fiume wrote the response and destroyed that pseudo-scientist. He destroyed him. Black man from Haiti. He told him, he wrote a book too called On the Equality of Human Races, and in which he deconstructed, he destroyed all those pseudo-scientific theories that that Bobino was pushing for as a way for them to colonize Africa and to justify the odious crimes that they had committed. So, once again, in the spirit of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, thank you so much, everyone. Keep on doing the great work you are doing. I'm so inspired. I learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsieur Pierre Labossiere from the Haiti Action Network and Professor Menu and Pam for their slides. So, in about a minute or two, we're going to have our closing performance by Foi de Congo and Friends with a drumming performance. But I wanted to mention a couple of things first. We have our Celebrating Success, which is also known as Black Graduation, on Saturday, May 13th from 11 to 1. We have been doing Celebrating Success for about 25 years now, Professor Hines? So, this is something that's definitely a part of the campus. So, please keep that date in mind. Also, we have African American Staff Association, African American Studies Scholarships. Go online to the CCC website to apply and get information about all scholarships, not just the African American Staff Association and the Afro Studies Department. And I believe that link is closing. I believe it's next week is the last week to apply for a scholarship. So if you are a student here at Contra Costa College, please go to that website. And we also have a scholarship called the Kennedy King Scholarship, which is about $6,000. You have to be an African American, Latin American, and Native Indigenous descent to apply for the scholarship. So we also have our study abroad programs with Professor Manu and Pam. He will be going to Kemet and Ethiopia this summer. So please talk with Professor and get more information. And I would like to introduce our closing performance by Foi de Congo.
We're not done yet. Sit down. Where you going? It was great though. I saw you what to do. We almost finished. How you guys doing? You okay? All right. We got a little bit for you. Can you guys say Mbote? Mbote. 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 Mbote means hello in Kikongo. Mbote. Mbote. Everybody all right? Yeah. So typically, in presentation of music, the African continent, it's really not this barrier of audience and performance, right? So don't worry, this year we're not gonna bring you guys up to dance, but we would like to teach you a song and see if you can sing with us. Is that okay? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. We're good. Hey, 5, 6, 7, try. Hey. One more time. 5, 6, 7, go. Hey. Hey, mama. Hey. 5, 6, 7, go. Hey, mama. Hey, mama. Hey. You got it? This is mama. Hey, mama. Hey. 5, 6, 7, go. Hey, mama. Hey. Hey, 5, 6, your turn. Hey. 6, 7 again. Hey. Hey, mama. Hey, 6, 7, try. Hey, mama. Hey. That's your response. You have the A and A, mama. You got it? I'm going to bring my uncle here. Uncle. Okay, let's go. Uncle, we're going to sing the solo and then you guys will respond. Okay? Hey. So you go A first and then A, mama. Alright? So he went higher, so we're gonna probably, or he went lower in his octave, so we have to adjust. So go, I'll give you an example. Yes? So you just go A and A, mama.